Hi, welcome to the Agile Soul. In today's session, we're going to take a deeper look into the Tuckman theory of team development. Bruce Tuckman was a psychologist who was engaged by the US Navy to understand and observe a group of sailors and figure out what they needed to go through in order to become a high-performing team. After spending years observing and spending time with these sailors, Tuckman published his paper in 1965, where he stated that a team goes through 4 stages from the time of coming together in order to become a high-performing and delivering team. In 1977, he published a second iteration of this theory, which is called the Tuckman-Jensen model, where they together introduce the 5th stage, or a 5th stage that a team goes through in its life cycle. The 4 stages that Tuckman mentions in his first publish are the forming stage, the storming stage, the norming stage, and the performing stage. And in the second iteration, Tuckman and Jensen add the 5th stage, which is adjourning. Looking at each of these stages, let's understand what they mean or what a team goes through in these stages. So, the forming stage. This stage is the initial creation of the new team, or it's the coming together of the individuals. What happens here is the team is just getting to know each other. There's an understanding of each other, the different ideas that each one is bringing to the table. There's also this understanding of what is the initial goal that the team is presented with. And based on that goal, there's an exchange of ideas already happening at this stage. It is important to remember that everything that happens in this stage stems from a very raw information that the team has about the goal that they need to achieve, and the steps and the problems they need, or the hurdles they need to cross in order to achieve that goal. The forming stage is relatively quite short, and the team very soon moves into the storming stage. And here, this is when the members of your team start exchanging ideas and thoughts on how they should tackle the goal and what they need to do in order to achieve it. Each member in this stage is trying to prove their place in the team, and what they are also trying to prove why they were picked for this group, let's say. What happens in this stage is you will see a lot of friction start building up between your team members, because as mentioned earlier, they are still trying to convince the other that, hey, I have a better idea, or my idea is good because of XYZ reasons. And what happens here is there is a lot of disagreements that happen, and the progress that your team makes is really slow, because it's a time for a lot more discussions. It's more talking than actual work that gets done in this stage. One thing that the team once you get through the storming phase, it is important, because what happens here is, in order to prove your idea, the individuals are actually spending time understanding the goal, understanding the different problems that are lying in front of them. So the knowledge boom that happens in this storming phase within the team about the goal, about the project, is extremely vast. And that is super important, because it is through this knowledge burst that the team eventually moves on to the norming stage, where they start focusing on actually resolving the problems. Instead of just disagreeing with each other, they start focusing on what solution can we find from this disagreement. And there's also a realization that the needs of the team precede or come before the needs of each individual. And it is in this stage that you start defining various roles and responsibilities within your team. It is in this stage that a more solid set of ways of working are defined, because you now know exactly what you need to do. There's a better idea of start to finish, and there is a very good priority alignment that happens at this stage. Different roles, leadership roles come up, people understand that following is better than always trying to lead. So the maturity of the team really showcases in this stage. From the norming stage, the team then, with all of these things organized, they move into a performing stage. And this is where the team, now that we know our priorities, we know operationally how we're going to work on, they actually start focusing on the deliveries. So there is a team spirit that gets formed in this stage because everybody suddenly is motivated, because you are actually working, you finally have reached the point where you're going to start problem solving. You reach a point where you're not just worried about who was right, but hey, I know what I'm going to do. Each one takes their little bit of work and they start delivering. So the team also feels very autonomous because no one's checking on each other, but everybody's given that freedom of space and you're making progress. Most importantly, in this stage, the team is making progress, which means they are performing, they are delivering, and they are making steps in achieving the goal that they had initially set out to do. So these were the 4 stages that Tuckman presented in his first model. And in the second iteration, as mentioned, they added the adjourning stage. So based on my understanding of the Tuckman model, the adjourning stage is twofold, where the first one talks more generally about the disbanding of the team after you have achieved your goal. In an ideal scenario, everything went well, you went through all of the stages, the team performed, you made progress, you reached your goal, your job is done. Every team member then moves on to a new challenge, either they move on to new teams or they just move on to a new project with the same group of individuals. But this also talks about the attrition aspect of the team or the dissolution of the team. And there are different reasons this attrition or dissolution can happen, right? The team is stuck in its performing phase for too long. There is a stagnation. People either leave the team or leave the company. You're not making the progress that you want to make. There's a lot of bureaucracy that you need to go through, or your team is stuck in the storming phase for way too long. And there is the scary part about being in that phase, the storming phase for such a long time, is you start losing trust within individuals. And the only way you move out of that is either really intervention from the outside or a change of personnel. So there has to be some individual shuffling that happens there. It could also be that your team just never arrives at its performing stage. Your team can never agree on stuff in the norming state. So you never really go to delivery. You're just trying to figure out stuff, get all of your processes in order. And the third or the fourth reason I could think of for attrition or dissolution is change in priorities. The reason your team was put together in the first place for the company might have changed, and the reason is, or your project is no longer high priority. So that could also be one of the reasons why you just adjourn and you move away. So these stages, it's super important to understand where you and your team are through this Tuckman's model, because when you know where you are, it gives you a roadmap of what you need to do to get to where you need to be, which is, in an ideal scenario, you want to reach the disbandment part of the adjourning of the team, because that's when everything is done. It's a success. Quick examples of how do you get out of each stage. Usually the forming stage is, as mentioned, quite short. But if you find yourself still stuck in a forming stage where you're like, okay, we're still exchanging ideas, but we're not really making progress, you might want to really, what you need there is really someone to take the leadership and just tell you, okay, this is what we're going to do. Let's do it, and give you that direction and the push. If you find you and your team stuck in the storming phase, most likely what is needed here is some sit-down workshops, some sessions where you collect all of the ideas, you listen to them, weigh them, and you really come up with a concrete next step. It's not about proving who is better than the other, but as mentioned, it's to really understand what is the requirement of the team and of the company. If you're in the norming phase, This is most likely where you could take the support of an agile coach or someone external to help you define your roles and responsibilities, help you set up ways of working, and give you a sense, help you organize yourselves in a way that you can get your list of priorities. And through this stage, you automatically move into the performing stage, which is really more about you and your team, understanding. And this is where you can use a lot of agile tools and frameworks to start monitoring your performance. Okay, if you are a team that uses Scrum, okay, let's talk about what is our sprint goal? What is the bare minimum we need to achieve? What is our overall project roadmap? What do we need to get done in order to achieve this goal? Break it down into deliverables and start working on those deliverables. And these are different ways and examples you could identify and move out of these stages, and hopefully reach the more happier part of a journey, which is disbanding after achieving goal rather than attrition and dissolution. I hope you found this video interesting and useful. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can also follow me on my various handles: Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Quora. Don't forget to check out my website as well for this and other articles and videos on different topics.